Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Mortgage Tech Talks. I am your host, Tom. Massimo is back with us after a 4-week hiatus, I think it was, something like that.
Yeah.
So great to have him back. Now we're going to have to go back to actually announcing ourselves of who's talking because our voices sound so similar. Have to pick that habit back up again. But great to have you back, Massimo. And I wanted you to be back for this episode in particular because we got a very special guest with us. When we launched the podcast, I think this was like number one on our list when we started, okay, who could we interview? I think this guest was right there at the top, I think number one. So it's been a big one. We've been looking forward to it and now finally have the opportunity to do so. So really excited for this. So without any further ado, Doug Adlam, great to have you with us. I was going to do a bit of an intro for you, but you could probably do a better job than I can. So just a little bit about who you are and and then we can get into it.
Thanks for that. Number one on the list, that's probably a little bit too high, but I appreciate that.
All right, we'll revise. We'll revise. Yeah. No.
Yeah, I guess I've been in the mortgage business, I think, coming up on 17 years here, and started in the illustrious year of 2008. Was a mortgage broker, built a mortgage team, built a mortgage business, built a mortgage brokerage. Got involved with disrupting the industry back in 2017 with getting Finmo off the ground with three other co-founders, and grew that to what it is today to acquisition by Lendesk back in 2020. Delved into another tech product for a while. Still have that one on the go. Just a small product within the industry, and then
Mass, you look
lastly,
surprised there.
Should I know what that is?
no, it's just a little tool that we kind of keep quiet
Oh, I think
amongst
I
a
know what
group
you're
of
talking
us.
about. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Worked in the wealth management space, grew a business in that space for 3 years, and wasn't where my passion lied. So I'm back full time in the mortgage business.
Awesome. Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of people that listen to this will know Doug because he's one of the easiest guys to talk to, and he's at all the events, and now he's on boards and all that. He's very important. And I'm not kidding, he is in the industry. And he's important to us. There's a bit of history for those of you that don't know. Doug is client number one in the mortgage industry ever.
On Blue Mortgage, right?
Yeah, on Blue Mortgage.
Before it was even called Blue Mortgage.
Yeah, the funny story, and we can get into it a little bit, is when the business started, not Doug's business, our business, we were tinkering around with all the CRMs. And specifically, funny enough, Salesforce and HubSpot, and actually it wasn't HubSpot, it was Microsoft Dynamics back then.
Yeah.
And we went and met up with Doug through a family friend, and his father was in real estate. And long story short, we go there, and Doug was like, "Have you heard of this thing called Zoho?" And we were like, "No, what's that?" Now, Zoho is notoriously bad at marketing, but Doug had found them, and he can tell a little bit about the stats and why he liked it. But basically, Doug was client number one. He gave us a shot at the time. What was I, 20? I don't even know. I was young.
Still in
He's just
school,
like, "Yeah,
right?
go build
Yeah.
this." We sent him a price. He's like, "Yeah, sounds about right. Here, build it this summer." And we gave him a 6-week roadmap, and I think we were on time. But long story short, he found the tool that we are now built on. He gave us a chance to build it. And honestly, there's been so much R&D that has come from Doug. We used to meet quarterly in Guelph. That's kind of where his head office is. And I remember vividly a conversation in your Mississauga office. And you said, you're like, "Dude, what you built for us, you should build for everyone." And that was like 3 years before we actually really gave it a shot. So I just wanted to give that there, that's why he was number one on our list. He's very integral to the trajectory of our company, and he's always been supportive. And so that's my 2 cents there, and gives him a bit more credibility over and above all the other stuff.
Thanks for telling that. Thanks for telling that story. And going back to that point, I still remember you guys were pretty innovative and in green and looking to do new things. And I was at a point where I was just completely dissatisfied with all the other options that were out there
Were
in
you
the mortgage
using anything
space.
back then?
I demoed auto for a bit. I was looking at them, and another one I
Probably
was looking at
Gomax.
was Gomax. Verico Dynamics was around at the time. What was I on right before? I think I was even on Maximizer, which was a tool that the financial planning industry was using. So I tried that one for a bit. And there was another one in the middle there, another small startup that I don't think is around anymore. Again, spending a lot of time on figuring out where is my data going to sit and be held, and how am I going to manage this business for the long term. Lo and behold, we got connected, and I'm super pumped that you guys are where you are today, and you deserve a ton of congratulations on what you've built and how it's continuing to build.
Appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Yeah, maybe I could pick up on one theme. I think in two instances you picked on it, we touched on it. So first off, being dissatisfied with the options that exist, you kind of, I guess, were a trailblazer in that sense. Went out, found Zoho, which is now what Blue Mortgage is built on, and now used by thousands of people in the mortgage industry. But it wasn't thousands of people at the time. It was maybe you and one other. I know one person on the West Coast, but maybe you beat him. You guys might need to. Etienne. I don't know if you know Etienne
Yeah,
Lipinski, but
Eitan, yeah.
he
Yeah.
claims he was before you, but you guys might need to settle that once and for all.
Yeah, we might have to settle that one. Yeah, we. I remember meeting him, and we chatted Zoho for a while, and we were right around the same timeline. So yeah, we'd have to track when we each subscribed, I think.
Yeah, you'll have to figure it out. But no, so I mean, the point I was making though is you kind of being that trailblazer there, and then you touched on it, and I'm sure we'll go down that rabbit hole of being, in 2017, really founding a tech company and building it up. And so I think across the board, finding new tech tools, trying new things, it's a big part of, well, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a big part about how you think about your businesses, your mortgage business, other businesses that you're in. I mean, how do you kind of think, do you think that's true? And how do you think about that? Because it's always risky to go out and try new things. How do you kind of temper that risk, or how do you think about that in the context of your business?
Well, I think it's either remain dissatisfied or do something about it. And something that sometimes that doing something about it is researching. I had prior to entering the mortgage business, I just had come off of a 2.5 year master's thesis, so I spent years researching. And so it was just kind of second nature to really pick apart what was there, what was working, what wasn't working, and then even back then, like going back to the CRM days back in the beginning, was just evaluating what was available within the Canadian marketplace, how long had it been around, who was behind them, and really trying to figure out how much money was being was going into them. And like most companies in privately held companies, they don't you can't access that information, but they usually tell you what their price per month is and how many users they have, so you can kind of figure out what the revenue is, and without any
together. Yeah.
Right, pretty simple. So
yeah, sure.
I remember way back then doing this analysis and looking outside of Canada, what was going on in the US, looked at Australia, looked at the UK, and just looked on the global scale to tell the story of kind of how I stumbled across Zoho. But one of the things I like to look at was the research and development line. So how much money is being spent on researching, developing, and improving the software. And this is going way back, so my numbers may be off a little bit. But in this 1 year, the data that I was looking at, Salesforce in that year had spent $1.2 billion in research and development. Zoho had spent 600 million, and then the next closest was 50 million, and that was on the global spectrum. And I didn't know who the heck Zoho was, but knew what Salesforce was. And to think that there was a company spending half as much in R&D as the global giant Salesforce really caught my attention. Really showed to me that they were investing in themselves, investing in their people, investing in their technology, and really truly had a long-term vision. You compare that to the Canadian mortgage industry. Like, I love all the tech that's out there. I love disruption. I love options. I applaud every innovator and technology lover that has brought something to our space, whether it's Canadian, North American, or global. But my concern on the CRM point is, hey, I'm planning and building a business here for the next 40 years. What do I need now that I'll still have in 40 years, so that I don't have to keep going through iterations of making changes? And one of the big pieces behind that was, do I ever see a position where a Canadian company is going to be able to invest $600 million in 1 year on research and development?
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen. So that's really was a big decision maker for me, is who's going to be around for the long term, and who's going to have the pockets deep enough to be able to keep up with the CRM evolution. That's back in 2012, 2013. I think it was actually 2011 that started doing all the digging. And so it's been actually maybe even before that, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, 2010, 2011, I think, is when I was along the CRM venture.
Yeah. I mean, just going along that line, like investing in your own tech and finding the right tech. I know you've been, since I've known you, passionate about being independent as a brokerage. And I know you just recently did a whole rebrand, and you can talk about that if you want. And I also know that you have had many networks and many brokerages offer you money or whatever to join them. I'm just curious, like, what you would say to people. Like, we get a lot of new clients coming saying, like, hey, I'm going to join this network or not that network. They give me this for free or that for free, and they give me lender access. And yeah, are there tidbits that you would want to tell brokers as it relates to tech or just freedom or whatever? Tom and I have talked about this, but I think it would mean a lot coming from someone who's been in the industry a while.
Well, there's a few things you touched on, and I think it's you mentioned freedom and tech, and it's basically different features, right? Like different value propositions. And the great thing about our industry right now is that there's different value propositions to consider. There's different technologies you have a choice to use. There's many different opportunities for you to explore, which wasn't the case 15 years ago. It wasn't to the same scale. It was different. Were there options? Yeah, but there's way more options now than there ever were. Which again is a sign of a healthy industry. We want that competition. But on a couple of things that you mentioned, kind of that freedom, if you will, the freedom to choose, the freedom to own your own data, all that topic. I think it comes down to just really understanding and taking the time to understand your terms of use agreements, understand your contracts with your brokerage, understand the brokerage's contracts with your network. And it's tough as somebody who's just starting in business, getting into the mortgage world, or even somebody who's been around for a few years. Really taking the time to understand the implications of a contract that you're signing. I know that has really been important to me over all the years, and spent a lot of time evaluating and analyzing different options for our business, for our team, for our brokerage, for our brokers, and really it comes down to understanding the contract, understanding what you're getting in exchange. Because there's always an exchange. You're giving something, and you're like, to gain something, you're losing something. It doesn't have to be that way. It's got to be a little bit of a win-win, but it makes sense. Hey, we're going to give you this, but we're going to give you this. If, hey, we're going to give you a signing bonus, then we're going to lock you down for X number of years, and we're going to add these additional caveats into your contract. Well, you're always paying for something. So if you're getting money, you're paying for it somewhere else. And it really comes down to what you want, what you need, what's best for your business. And I'm not opposed to contracts. I'm not opposed to bonuses and all that kind of stuff, if it's the right thing for your business and you can see the future. Like, that's the bigger part. With absolute certainty what you're doing in the next 5 years. And it is interesting on when you compare mortgage brokerage network contracts, and you simplify it and connect it to the act of transacting in mortgages. You're a mortgage broker, you're advising your clients, and something I used to always use is like, okay, well, 5 years ago, did you know you'd be right here right now? Like, look at your personal circumstance, your family circumstance, where you're living, where you're working. Did you know you would be here? And 9 times out of 10, probably 98 times out of 100, the answer is no. So if that is the same case for somebody buying a house, why isn't that the same case for your business?
One of those things, it's, no free lunch, right? So if you're not paying for something with money, you're paying for something with, your commitment, right? Or you're paying for it with your data, right? And so to your point, as long as you're aware of that, right? You know that, hey, this is what I'm giving and this is what I'm getting, then it's okay, right? And I think, to your point, there's a lot of options out there. And the best thing any individual can do is to get educated on those options. And knowing what you're signing is huge. I mean, we've all done it, just skim through the terms and service. But if it's something as big as, who you're going to be, really associated with for the next 5 years, it's something you want to take a look at. The only thing more expensive than a good lawyer is a bad lawyer. I want to go back to, and I think we can get into this kind of rabbit hole now. I think it's a good timing. You talked about now there's so much more choice. Take me back to 2017. You're looking to start this business with some of your co-founders. It is very much so that environment of kind of just one player at the time, and you guys are going out and trying to do something, I'd say pretty bold, trying to disrupt that. And what was your thinking there, right? Like, very few people are able to go out and break a monopoly and do that. It's a pretty bold vision. Did you think about that, or were you thinking just, hey, this thing is valuable and we see value, let's just throw it at the wall and see what sticks? Like, where was kind of your guys' mind? And maybe for the listeners who don't know that full story, give a little bit of that background, exactly what you were starting in 2017 with Finmo, and And yeah, we'll dive into the question.
Totally. So before I answer that question, yeah, just a little bit of background. Finmo was I don't even know, can't remember what we called it at the time. I think we were called Blink Lending or something like that, and I think we didn't even have a name when we first launched it, if I remember correctly. But the whole purpose behind it was to launch a new product within the mortgage market that would be more tech forward, more to be focused on the customer journey, and would allow brokers to communicate more seamlessly with their borrowers and make that experience just easier and better for the broker channel. That's really where it came from. It was I'd been part of a mastermind group for better part of 6 years, and it's been about a year and a half, I think, where it continued to come up that, hey, listen, this is a problem. It's not as easy for our customers to deal with us as it should be. It's painful, and this is going back, to 2017. Like, it is painful to deal with a mortgage broker. We've got banks investing tons of money. I remember at the time, TD Bank had done an exchange program with their CTO out of Australia, so they were coming out here for a certain term, and I started looking, okay, well, what does that mean? And start looking at the innovation the money that I'm going into tech innovation in Australia in terms of customer journey, the customer experience. And meanwhile, okay, hold on, this person isn't coming to Canada. Then maybe that's where they're going to be focusing their efforts. And like, what is the broker channel doing? Yeah, so out of these mastermind groups, there was this common complaint that we didn't have this way of really making it easier for our customers to deal with us. Straight up, it took Carter Zimmerman, who was doing a bunch of marketing lead gens for a bunch of us. Him and Greg sat down and said, hey, we're going to start a business. We're going to solve this problem. And we want to know who wants to go along for the ride. And I put my hand up. I was the first big check and joined them as a partner in the business, along with a gentleman by the name of Johnny Watson. Yeah, we took this business from an idea and actually made it into something. But to get back to your question,
yeah,
right? Your question was, basically why? The answer was survival. Survival. We took the risk on starting Finmo to ensure that our businesses survived. We were not confident that the only other, and Filogix was the monopoly holder. They were at like 99% market share. Marlboro Sterling had a very, very tiny share. They ended up being bought, if I remember everything correctly, Marlboro Sterling and Auto were purchased, and then that became Velocity, if I remember the history on it, which is, again, super cool and continued to allow the industry to disrupt. But we built it because we did not have the confidence in the technology companies that were supplying us with our tools to evolve to a point where we would be able to continue to compete with the bank's experience. So that is why it was started. That's why I believe it was started. That's where my heart was in it. I'm like, we need to make it easier for our customers to deal with us so they continue to work with us now into the future. Our first group of investors were all broker owners or major brokers that had massive books of business that were concerned that their livelihood would be impacted by the inability to provide a smooth and simple customer experience.
When you built it with that survival thing, was it just like me, Greg, all these other guys? It's like, we're going to make our business good. There wasn't really an outbound, this is going to become a big product at that stage? Or
was it like an altruistic thing? Like, hey, we're doing this for the community? Or was it a bit more selfish? Hey, I'm going to do this for my business, or a little bit of both?
That's a great question. Like, I can't fully recall those conversations. As you say that, I definitely remember some discussion around: are we just building this for ourselves? Are we going to make this available to everyone? And we definitely landed on, listen, this is a solution that the industry needs. We can utilize the expertise of our early investors to help beta test and help us grow the product and help us make the solution better. But ultimately, it was to deliver a solution to the industry that allowed it to propel forward. I really think that Finmo was the tool, was the product that shifted the Canadian technology space when it comes to.
I was going to ask you that. I was like, are you guys taking credit for it? You guys are.
Whether I'm not speaking on behalf of Finmo or Lendesk at this point in time, but in my opinion, 100%, it was the first.
I'm teasing you a little bit, but I think you guys were, absolutely. Like, it was, what was before Finmo, right? It was nothing. It was just Filogix, right, at the time.
Yeah.
Right? So
I don't think Auto or any of that had like a portal or anything. Like, it was just back-end databases, and Finmo. I think
Yeah,
you
there was
guys
some
did
people
break the
using.
seal on innovation. Yeah.
I think so, and it needed to happen. I don't know how much longer any of us could have waited for it to happen. Like it would have happened eventually, we know that, but who knows how long the industry would have had to wait for everyone else to basically prioritize, say, oh my gosh, like okay, these guys are doing this over here, like maybe we should actually pay attention to this. Maybe we should start spending money on this. And I think it was just a reversal in the industry at the time. The whole industry was let's create a tool for a broker to do their business versus let's create a tool that allows a customer to work more seamlessly with their broker.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a complete flip. So when you build customer journey first, you end with a customer journey first product. When you build broker first, you end with a broker first product that also has a customer journey. Right. So it's a very different core purpose and core mentality. But at the same time, it's shed light on this journey and that hey, it's important and it needs to be done, and it literally raised the bar for everybody within the industry. All of a sudden everyone started focusing, hey, we're going to do this too, we're going to do this, and we're going to play catch up. That's fine because somebody had to lead and we let it, and everybody else, like the whole industry is now better because somebody disrupted it, and it just happened to be us.
It's an interesting mindset, I think, when you talk about, okay, we're building it for the customer versus the broker. And I think it's interesting because at the end of the day, yes, you're building it for the customer, but the people who you were selling it to, or the people you're trying to get to use it, were brokers, right? So you're selling to brokers, but you're building it for, well, their customers. And so in a roundabout way, yes, the broker cares about it, but it wasn't that direct thing. And so I'm curious, did that ever come into conflict? Like, would you go to, a brokerage maybe in the early days and kind of, hey, here's this product that we're trying to sell, and they say, well, if I'm viewing it from my perspective, maybe not so much the client's perspective, we really need this, this, and this. And were you guys just kind of, okay, whatever, we'll figure it out? Or were you pretty strict and say, no, these are our values and this is what we're sticking to? Like, was there anything like that, Doug? And I guess how important were values as you were kind of going through that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I had obviously a lot of experience on the development side of it in the early days and the testing phase, and then seeing brokers within my team and other teams use it. And then in that sales role, when I was helping the country learn and be educated around what Finmo was, got a lot of those questions. We stayed committed to the core purpose. Again, we related everything back to the client journey. How will this impact the client journey? Something as simple as, I want to add custom questions in my version of the app, or I want to make sure that this particular question is mandatory for all of my applications. We would bring it back to, well, is this the best for the customer or is this best for you? Because if it's best for the customer, then it's something we'll consider. But if it's something that's just really better for you, then we're not going to do it. Like, you've heard of the concept of scope creep and basically over featurization, which I don't even know if it's a term.
Not just
What's
heard
that?
of it. Not just heard of it. We felt it. Yeah. Felt
Totally.
it.
Yeah.
Totally. I was definitely one of those guys for you in the early days. Like, can we do this, 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 this? What about this? And no, we can't do that. But we can do this and this. But do we really want to do this? Yeah. And then we evaluate it and look at the cost structure and how often be used. Yeah, you're right. We probably don't need it.
I remember sending you one of Canada's bigger brokerages brand name, and they, like when you were at Finmo, and you guys talked to them, and they wanted custom everything. And just to back up your point, you guys said we're not a fit, and they were like $1 billion shop or an $800 million shop.
They weren't used to getting
No.
told to them. Right?
Yeah, this was
totally.
Dave. I don't think he'd mind even saying this. Like, I mean, Dave Butler. And he wanted custom stuff because he had a certain clientele and whatever, and it didn't end up working out, and he went a different way. But yeah, and it's funny, that whole client journey piece and the focus on that is still feedback we hear from clients all the time, because we work with people on Velocity and Finmo and whatever. And there's just something about the Finmo app, you guys nailed it, where it just works. And to your point, like the address autofill, it works in a certain way when you say you have to live somewhere or work somewhere for 3+ years. Like, it's really client focused. And so it's quite amazing how deep you guys went on that.
Yeah, there's a lot of data behind it. Going back to my master's was in marketing and consumer studies, and so market research is what I went to school for, and that's what I thought I was going to do. And I even did it for about a year and realized that wasn't for me after way too much school. But then I actually got the opportunity to, apply some of my knowledge on that with the Finmo product. And so it was really like, we were very data heavy. Like, we were tracking like everything, like how long was it taking people to answer a certain question? Where were they getting hung up? Why were they getting hung up? Like, really going into the data analytics of how can we help the customer, the borrower, get through the experience as efficiently as possible. And you only get that with data. You only get that with interaction and asking questions and soliciting feedback and doing behind the scenes testing. So it was really cool because like I remember in those early days, like we were on 1 or 2 week sprints back then. And so we were update the app at least every 7 to 14 days. Okay, hey, here's feedback from the previous research session. Here's what we're going to change. Tweak. Okay, great. We've just, saved 6%. We've reduced the time spent on the app by 6%. How do we reduce more time? And then you continue to go through it and evolve, and then make it logical. And from the customer's perspective, not the broker's perspective, because brokers want this, and the brokers want everything, and the customer wants the easiest path. And going back to those things such as the required fields. Well, I don't want an app unless they fill this in. I'm like, would you rather the client goes and works with somebody else just because they can't remember their postal code on their previous home? Or do you want them to submit the app and you could probably find it on Google? What would you prefer?
Yeah,
Like,
right. Yeah.
It's
5-minute Google search, right? Or 5-second probably, right?
Totally. Like lead it back to the customer. But it's where we stayed strong, and it was cool though. Like from the other side, some of the things that we launched was a lot of things that we built were, and I'm assuming continually, are broker focused and broker suggested. So when when people are using Finmo and they actually go in and say, I really wish it did this, well, they log all of that, and then eventually, they're tracking like, geez, we've had tons of requests. Look at this, we've had 52 requests for this specific feature. Why is that? Okay, look into it. Let's look into it. Talk to some people, figure out what it is they're really looking for. See, other thing we found out, a broker would say they wanted A, they really wanted D.
Yes.
But they didn't know how to properly articulate what they wanted.
I think that's an interesting concept. We run into that too, because it's especially on feature side, support side. Hey, can you do this? And I think honestly, it goes back to kind of what you're talking about with the values. They have a problem and they think the solution is this, right? But actually, what you need to do really well is define the problem very well and then let the solution come from there. Like most people come and say, I need this solution. It's like, whoa, what's the problem? And I think I bring it back to what you're just talking about, because I think a lot of brokers, the problem you're actually experiencing is that your clients aren't filling out the app. That's the problem, right? And so when you come and you say, hey, I need this solution, it's like, whoa, let's back up. Let's understand the real root problem and then go from there versus, hey, we already have certain assumptions. We're working from this solution standpoint. And I've brought this up on the podcast a couple of times is there's a lot of value in that, because solutions are somewhat static. Problems are always evolving. And so if you can fall in love with the problem and you can learn it really well, you're always going to be able to provide value, whereas certain solutions can stagnate, I think, over time, right? And so, being in love with that problem versus the solution is a great way forward. So I guess now on this journey, you're saying yes to a lot of things for sure, but you're saying no to some things. What's the point, I would say, when you guys were like, okay, this is something, right? Because I think, Mass, we can talk about this, right? I think back in 2018, 19, we started Blue Mortgage. We were just, trying to figure it out and see if this was anything. And I'd imagine Finmo was very similar, right? It was just, hey, you and a couple people in your mastermind trying to figure it out. Was there that one aha moment where you're like, hey, this is more than just us, three of us in this mastermind trying to figure something out? This is a real thing. Was there that moment for you, Doug?
That moment happened multiple times, and it happened in a couple of ways. One, it happened when people from outside of the industry started investing in us. That was a really big deal, when you're talking private equity firms, that kind of thing. Like,
right.
It was pretty cool to see people from outside the industry invest in us. When we started seeing some brokers that had been around the business for a really long time that were starting to invest in the company was another. But the last piece was the number of users. Like, I still remember when we hit like 200 users, and then we hit 500 users, and I 700, 800. Like, I don't know why these numbers stick out, but it's like, geez, we're really, really onto something here. Like, this is legit. It's completely legit. And then being able to see, we were, prior to the acquisition by Lendesk, like we were actively directly connecting with lenders and building those pipelines. Because when Finmo first started, it was just a application documentation experience for the borrower, but there was no way to submit your deal. Right? You took it, you transposed it. We got to the point where we were pushing to Filologics, so that was great. I remember that milestone was huge. Oh, great! We don't have to re-enter. One button push and it's into Filologics. Amazing. Now we can get our deals approved. And then to the last piece of actually building those lender connections, building those lender bridges, and then ultimately the acquisition with by Lendesk that opened up the rest of those bridges was just huge.
For us, it was when someone signed up for Blue Mortgage and we didn't even talk to them, right?
Yeah, I
think,
was going to say some of those early
Yeah.
AdWord people,
Yeah,
like they
yeah.
search their problem and they find us and then they sign up, to your point. That was
Yeah.
we're like, oh,
That's pretty cool. Because I mean, early days, I think a lot of founders can maybe attest to this, where it's like, sales are pretty manual, right? It's like, hey, like I'm knocking on your door, and like, hey, I know you from, whatever, we're buddies. Like, try this thing out, come on, and that's how you get your feedback and you get your early customers. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. But yeah, that first moment, Mass, when we had some like woke up one morning and it's just like, holy crap, someone just put in their credit card and is paying for this product, and they're just going. It's like, wow, that's pretty special.
Yeah. I mean, I have a question for you, Doug, and I think we're kind of coming up near time here, but you've kind of transitioned into another level of your career, owning multiple businesses. I see you doing a lot of entrepreneur conferences and investing in yourself. Do you see another tech phase happening or another big jump? I don't know if we're kind of there and it's just tweaking now, or if you're hearing things, because you got your finger on the pulse a lot more than we do, probably.
I would say that our industry is doing pretty good in the technological front right now. We're in a pretty good place. We've finally caught up with the majority of the world, which is great. And again, going back to that competition, like I love the fact that there's multiple deal submission platforms and CRMs that Canadian mortgage brokers get to choose from, because it's just going to continuously create this competitive nature that's going to continue to push everybody to just improve. So we need that, and that's awesome. Now, is there another evolution? I think what everybody's talking about right now is the artificial intelligence component and how that can be integrated into your business. And there's so many cool ways that people are already integrating AI into their businesses, and that's just starting to scrape the surface. But outside of that, I think that the next big piece as well is the open banking, and how exactly is that going to impact the brokering space? I'll tell you from a positive side for Canadian finance, broker channel, bank channel, you name it, it's going to drastically reduce fraud, like drastically. And there's a lot of fraud for shelter, particularly right now with rates really high and costs really high. So you have to have additional processes in place to try to catch it. But unfortunately, when desperation hits, desperate people will do desperate things and do what they can to try to get into a home. So I think it's going to have a really, really positive impact on the business. It's also going to speed things up, which is something that everybody wants. But I really, truly think that we've got a long, long, long way to go to the point where you submit an application and everything's ready to close in 48 hours with a lawyer. Like that's the pinnacle, right? That's where people would like, oh, I would like, let's do it right away. I'm like, yeah, but it's a mortgage. Like it doesn't have to be done in 48 hours from one perspective. That's a whole other tangent I could go down. But on the other side, yeah, there's this race towards speed, towards simplicity, towards I want to order a mortgage like I order a Uber Eats.
Domino's
like
pizza, Uber Eats,
right?
yeah.
Like I want it that easy. I'm like, well, you know what? Sometimes things have to be a little bit harder. And a mortgage is one of those things that probably should be. When you're spending that kind of money on a house and financing that much, there should be some additional steps, some additional levers. Like there should be extra stuff that you do. But that being said, I think that our whole lending space has to go through a drastic evolution as to how they're qualifying people and what they're qualifying them on, which then relies on so many different components of the financial system, everything from regulatory to credit to the different formulas that we're using for determining risk. Like if they were to scrap everything that we're using now, this is a wild and crazy idea, but if you were to scrap GDS, TDS, credit scores, everything, and came up with a completely new model to determine who is going to actually pay their mortgage payments on time, because that's all it is. Yep. It's who is going to pay their mortgage on time. End of story. If you can prove to me that you're going to pay your mortgage on time, I'll give you financing.
Yep.
That's what the banks do. It's what all our lenders do, our monolines, our credit unions, our trusts. Like that's what it's all about. So that's always fun to think about. What if you scrapped everything? How would we evaluate somebody for a mortgage loan? And how can we do it so it's pretty much instantaneous? But we got a ways to go.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
got a ways to go, and I think that it's a little bit on the you touched on it a little bit there on the regulatory side, right? I think that there's always that component, and I think that it's always that balance, and I think especially with something like open banking, that's what it's kind of coming against, right? It's the regulations in place of allowing it or disallowing it, and I think that for better for worse, and I know that you've have some international experience, Doug. You've looked at different countries and different things, and I think it's no different anywhere you go. It's just kind of different flavors of the same. Whereas a lot of the regulation determines these types of things that you're describing, and so I think it's smart for people who are interested in seeing where technology is going. I think it's useful to them to really understand the regulation. Like people think those are two different worlds, and in a sense they are, sure, but they overlap pretty quickly, pretty soon. And I think we even know some startups like Snap NOA and Chad over there that he was a tech startup that ran into some of these regulations. And so I think for anyone who's listening who's interested in mortgage tech, I think it's worth it for them to also kind of get their ear to the ground of these types of things that, Doug, you've been talking about, like open banking and on the regulatory side, because there is that connection, even though it might not be apparent on the surface.
Look outside of the country. Like don't
Yeah.
limit yourself to. It's the one thing that I've really spent a lot of time on in the last few years is educating myself on what's happening outside of the country in the mortgage space, what's happening inside of the country and outside of the country in completely different industries, and see what we can learn and adopt from what other people have already done or accomplished or are trying to do. So I think of Canadians typically kind of pigeonhole ourselves to just what's available in Canada, which is
Say sorry
which
for
is
it,
a start,
and we apologize for it. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's
right?
always
But you
sorry and
really,
please and thank you. Yeah.
yeah, and just open your horizons, learn a little bit differently. There's a lot to be learned within the Canadian mortgage industry, and I guess I've been around it long enough that I'm like, not that I've learned everything, because my goodness, it's always changing. But it's been really fresh to learn what's happening outside of Canadian mortgage space and outside of the industry itself, just to think a little bit differently.
Yeah, totally. Even if it's just a different perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, people should take note of that. I mean, we did the intro of Doug. It's someone I personally look up to a lot. I think Tom does as well. And I don't think you've written, I could be wrong here, but I don't think you've done a mortgage in years, but you still are an owner and all of that stuff. And there's not a lot of mortgage brokers that we know that have found a way to get out of there every day. And I know you've worked
Mhm.
hard at that. You use data-driven insights. You use this mentality you're using. I think people should take note of that because there is a level that you can get to like Doug. And yeah, I appreciate you being here and giving us all this insight. And it's always cool to go down the Finmo journey because for those of you that don't know, we were kind of, Doug kept us in the loop as he was growing Finmo and said, like, come along for the ride. And a lot of our early success, some clients I can think of came from Finmo. So we're always grateful for what you guys did and changed the industry.
The last thing I'll say is just going back to what you said, like being able to get to the point where I haven't done done a mortgage with a client in years and years, and have an amazing team that handles our clients. But the biggest piece to that is when I first started the business, I sat down and I designed the business, and then I designed the exit strategy. So, like before even starting in mortgage broker, which was okay. Well, what happens if I need to get out, or I want to get out, or just for some reason I leave the business? Well, the first component was having a CRM I can rely on to ensure that I can manage my business, oversee the business, track the efficiencies, track performance, evaluate customer service, and am able to pass the baton on to one or many team members to continue that mortgage experience. Because the one thing I learned that was really, really hard, and it's probably a different talk altogether, but you don't have to do everything, and you can find people to do what you do that are better at it than you are. Most mortgage brokers are like, I could never transition my business. I could never have somebody work with my clients. I'll always be doing deals. I can't possibly not answer the phone when I'm on the beach with my family on vacation. But the reality is you can, and many have done it. I haven't met with a client since 2016, and I'm proud to say that. But it wouldn't be where I am today without having the foundation of Blue Mortgage to be able to allow the business to operate. Because I invested in a business, and if you have a business, you need business systems in the core. Your CRM.
Love it. Yeah. Well, no, we appreciate that shout out. And I mean, I think you're exactly right. There's so many people we talk to, Mass, who are just always saying, how could I even, do this or automate this? We have to touch everything. And I think, yeah, Doug, you're a living testament of And I'm sure it was tough maybe at the time to let go, and I think it always is. But I think, when you're on the other side where you're at now, you say, hey, I should have done that way sooner, right? That always seems to be the case. And so, no, that's great. And I think that's as good a place as any to wrap this up. So thanks again, Doug. This has been a lot of fun. Thanks for everything over the years, of course. Maybe we'll do another episode when you come out with your next tech product. I don't know if it's staying under wraps or not, but we'll obviously stay in touch. But thanks so much for this. A lot of fun chatting with you as always. And for everyone listening, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Share it with your friends if you found this valuable. We'd really appreciate it. Thanks again, and we'll see you guys next week.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Mass.